Welcome back to HQ. Now, we all knew that Cam Ward was going to go #1 overall to the Titans as their new QB1, but how did everyone else kind of end up? When you look at the transfer portal really taking over this QB class, you got guys like Jackson Dart going to the Giants with the 25th pick, Tyler Shuck to the Saints, Milroe to the Seahawks, Dylan Gabriel, what a journey he's had throughout college, going over to the Cleveland Browns, and a guy that we waited a long time to hear his name, Shedeur Sanders as well, who has had quite the journey going to the Browns. We look at Cam Ward, though. This is the first #1 overall pick who played FCS football since 1979. Now, during his introductory press conference on Friday, he was surprised by another #1 who used to play quarterback, even had his number retired. Warren Moon showed up, presented Ward with a #1 jersey, same number Moon wore as a member of the Houston Oilers for 10 years. But today, Titans GM Mike Borgonzi made some bold statements with his #1 pick. Take a listen.
We've had a lot of discussions with Bryant about that, and I think as we head into the offseason here, you know, like I said, it's going to be a competition, and these guys are going to get, you know, equal amount of reps right at the beginning, and you know, they'll separate themselves here as we head into training camp. But the idea here is to, you know, have competition in the room, and Bryant and his staff, you know, as we go through the offseason, get into training camp, I'm sure the reps will change at some point, you know, when people separate themselves.
So the NFL draft clearly has come and gone. It is now time to assess the best and the worst of what we saw in Green Bay. And you look at a guy like Cam Ward. We have our Pete Prisco and Bryant McFadden here. The Titans with that #1 pick. You got to think, Cam Ward, #1 pick. It's got to be the best pick for the Titans. But here we are breaking down the best and the worst for Tennessee. And Pete, you got him as your worst pick? Explain yourself.
Well, I just think that the Titans were in a position that they could have taken the best player in the draft, and that best player is Travis Hunter. And they said throughout the process that they weren't going to pass up on a generational player to take a quarterback. Well, they passed up on a generational player to take a quarterback. So I didn't like it from that standpoint. It's not that I don't like Cam Ward. I just don't think he's a slam dunk star quarterback. I think, you know, when I looked at this quarterback class, I had questions about everybody. I have questions about him. So I would have taken Travis Hunter in that situation rather than Cam Ward, and then maybe worried about my quarterback next year. That's what I would have done. They didn't. I understand it, but that's how I felt about it.
Well, I disagree. Cam Ward was the best pick for the Tennessee Titans because he fulfilled the biggest need for the Tennessee Titans. I get your logic in terms of maybe attacking a Travis Hunter or adding a Travis Hunter, but if you add Travis Hunter, who will be playing wide receiver, of course, both ways for Jacksonville, and probably the same would happen if he went to Tennessee, who's throwing him the football? Who? Will Levis?
No.
We're not.
He's got 21 starts.
We're not repeating that movie
already.
It's not about giving up on him. It's about showing the fan base something different. Repeating the same thing over and over.
Draft guys, B-Mac. That's not why you draft guys.
What I'm saying is, if you're in that position, Pete, and Cam Ward coming out of college, he's a much better quarterback than Will Levis was coming out of Kentucky. That's no debate. If you're in this position, you go get a better quarterback than trying to repeat the same thing and adding different pieces around him, and he's still throwing interceptions. He is who he is. At this point, he is who he is. So that's why I disagree. I understand, yes, Travis Hunter was the best player in this draft. You can't debate that. But in terms of the biggest need for Tennessee, it's the quarterback position, because if Brian Callahan decided to do what Pete is emphasizing, it's safe to say there will be a new coach coaching a new quarterback for the Tennessee Titans in 2026, because they wouldn't win any ball games with Will Levis.
There's probably going to be a new coach coaching the Tennessee Titans with Cam Ward playing quarterback.
So what does that tell you then, Pete?
It tells you, look, you don't pass on a generational quarterback, and by the way, you could get another quarterback next year. It should be a really good quarterback draft. They could have played with Will Levis. 21 starts are given up on him. And by the way, all that talk about, oh, they'll compete, they're not going to compete. If he outplays them, he's not going to win the job. There's just no conceivable way Will Levis plays quarterback in Tennessee. None.
Okay.
Well, Pete, you talked about the 21 starts they've given up on Will Levis. How many starts have Anthony Richardson have for the Colts? they already sent a message as well. That's the nature of this NFL world we're living in. If you're a quarterback, if you don't showcase that you can develop and win ball games in a year and a half, they're prepared to move on with you. That's just the name of the game in the NFL, unfortunately. It's not fair, but it is what it is.
Okay, so B-Mac, you're going the best pick being Cam Ward when Pete said that's the worst pick. Now, Pete, I want to discuss your best pick, and that came in the 3rd round, Penn State safety, Kevin Winston. What do you like about him?
Before he hurt his knee, he might have been a back end of the 1st round, early 2nd round guy. And you watch his tape, he's one of those guys that can go sideline to sideline. And in this league, you need guys who can do that. So again, he's coming off a knee injury. That's the concern with him. He dropped down a little bit because of the knee injury. But when he's on the field, man, he can go get the football. He's an athletic safety, and that's what you need in this league nowadays. A guy who can really be able to cover a lot of ground, and he can do that.
Pete, you're giving them a B- when it comes to the Titans' overall grade. We're going to move on now to your Jacksonville Jags right there. I think we were all shocked about the trade up to that 2nd pick. You didn't seem so shocked about it. Give me your best and your worst pick when it comes to the Jags.
Well, the best pick is going up to get the best player in the draft. This is a franchise that hasn't been bold. I mean, going to get Travis Hunter is a great pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they'll say, well, you gave up a lot. When you really look at it, in the end, you'll look back on this trade and say, no, they didn't. They got a generational talent, a guy who can play both sides. They're going to play him at wide receiver. He's going to play somewhat at defensive back, probably, 15 snaps, 3rd and long, maybe in the red zone. But to go up and get that guy, that's a bold move, and I love the move for them. The one I didn't like was Jack Kaiser in the 4th round. Look, he's a good linebacker. He's going to be a really good special teams player, but they got 62,000 linebackers on that roster. I probably would have gone in a different direction.
I'm right there with you. We agree. Travis Hunter was the best player in this draft, and Pete is being modest now, Jenny, but he had some idea that Jacksonville potentially could move up, in the draft, not knowing exactly where, but he had some idea that they could potentially move up, and he was dead on with that assessment. I love Tootin also, Pete, the running back from Virginia Tech, the speed. You talked about an offense that lacked speed a year ago outside of Bryant Thomas. They added speed and all cylinders, and Tootin is a guy, when you look at his style of play, contact balance is there, but he is a home run hitter, and being able to get him in the mid rounds of this draft as well was outstanding for Jacksonville. So I love everything about their draft.
This transitions nicely to our next team, and that's the Cleveland Browns. I have a feeling that your worst pick, Pete, is trading that number 2 pick. Walk us through it.
It is, but I get the rationale behind it. Or at least I did when they did it. I mean, I thought they'd be peeking ahead. They still might be to next year's quarterback class. You get the arsenal to go up, and you're going to get rid of Deshaun Watson finally, and next year you go in and you get a quarterback. But then they drafted 2 quarterbacks, so that kind of surprised me a little bit. But when I look at it, I think that's the way, they were looking, and then they draft Dylan Gabriel, and then they draft Shedeur Sanders. So I don't know what they're thinking, but I think initially that's what they were thinking, and I got that. I don't like trading the pick because I think you draft the best player in the draft. My best pick for them was the linebacker Carson Schlesinger out of UCLA. He is a prototypical Cleveland Brown linebacker. He's going to be a guy that everybody loves. He's going to be one of those guys that can make a ton of plays, and they have some injury concerns at that position, so it made a lot of sense to go get him.
Yeah, Carson, we talked about him being a former walk-on. I have a newfound love for walk-ons because they go through a lot throughout their collegiate career, and then he earned a scholarship, and he never missed a beat. He was relentless, hungry, and he's one of the best playmakers on their defense, and he definitely earned a lot of respect throughout the Big Ten a year ago for what he brings to the table. He is a 3-down linebacker. Yeah, and I agree with you, Pete. Trading out of number 2, it meant Cleveland, they were focusing more on the future. So I understand that. But then when you draft Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round and you use a 5th rounder on another quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, that didn't make any sense. That's just Cleveland being Cleveland. That was a head scratcher because if you felt like Shedeur would be available, and clearly most organizations felt that way, why take a flyer on a 3rd round quarterback? That didn't make any sense. So me personally, I feel like that was a wasted opportunity to continue to improve their team because you took 2 quarterbacks, one in the 3rd, one in the 5th. There's not a big gap of separation between the two in terms of their draft slots. Not to mention both players are very, very serviceable in terms of what they did collegiately. So that was a head scratcher for me because clearly you don't usually see that. And if a team does take 2 quarterbacks in the same draft, usually it's higher. It's a gap of separation between the two.
Andrew Berry did come out and said, well, you know, we just didn't expect that Shedeur would still be around when we came around to that 5th round pick. So it is what it is. We got a lot of quarterback competition in that room right now. Overall, a grade for the Browns. You're going with a B. We're going to move on now to the Bills. Now, they needed a lot of help on the defensive side. Pete, give me your best pick and your worst pick when it comes to Buffalo.
Well, I think the best pick was their first pick, and B-Mac will agree with me on this. Maxwell Hairston is, I thought, was the best corner in this draft class, not named Travis Hunter. I mean, he is that good, and he goes there with a cocky attitude. He can play man-to-man. This hasn't been a man-to-man team. They've been a big, heavy zone team, but maybe they're going to start playing more man-to-man because I think he has that type of skill. The pick that I questioned a little bit was the 2nd-round pick of Sanders, the defensive tackle. Good player, but there were questions about him in terms of the attitude coming out. Is he a great practice player? How's he going to handle that? But I thought the Buffalo Bills did exactly what they needed to do in the draft. There were questions about the defense. They wanted to get bigger. They got bigger. They got Sanders. They got the Walker kid from Kentucky. He's a monster in the middle. They got Jackson, the pass rusher from Arkansas, and they got a corner in Hairston. I love what the Bills did. They did a really nice job of supplementing that defense with some good young players.
Good young players that have played high-level competition. The first 4 picks all came from the SEC. Yes, Maxwell Hairston, I feel like he was one of the top corners in this draft. Wasn't overly healthy in 2024, but he still fought through that element. 2023, he had super hot tape. You talked about TJ. Yeah, I was a big concern because he's more of on the smaller size when you look at defensive tackles, but then they kind of added more size with Deion Walker in the mid-round as well. So, and Jackson, the length, he's almost like a Greg Rousseau, in terms of the length. A 6'6", 6'7" type of pass rusher. He does a great job with his hand placement and the straight arm to create separation. This was, once again, for the Buffalo Bills. It's no surprise, Jenny, Pete, they're always one of the best teams in the AFC because they usually do a great job in terms of draft picks. And once again, the same has happened.
Pete, you gave them
by the way, real quick, Jenny, anybody wants to go take a look at Jackson and what he did when he played against Will Campbell, who's going to be matched up against him probably in the division for a long time. He had a really nice game against Will Campbell when they met against each other.
Love it. Gave the Bills an A- at your overall grade. I just went through your list to see how many A+ you gave on here. I have a total of 13 A+, and when it comes to your best pick for the Chiefs, you give an A+ to Josh Simmons. What do you like so much about him? And then tell me about your worst pick when it comes to Kansas City.
Well, I didn't give any A+ grades to teams at all.
No, to players.
There was nobody who got a team.
Players.
Yeah, I love Josh Simmons. I think Josh Simmons is the best left tackle in this draft class when healthy. Now, that's a big question because he's coming off the patella tendon injury. You hear he's going to be okay for the start of the regular season. At least the Chiefs are giving indication that he will be. I think he's a great player. I think he's an athletic tackle who runs like he weighs 325 pounds and runs like he weighs about 240 pounds. Those guys don't come around too often. We're going to be talking about him as one of the next great left tackles in this league. I think the Chiefs nailed that pick. As far as the questionable one, 2nd-round pick, Norman Lott. When you look at Norman Lott, good player, gets up the field, but again, he's another guy, when you went through the scouting process, how much did he love football? There's some attitude questions there. He's got to be focused. The Chiefs got to take him under their wing and make him more focused on his football.
I love that you made.
And real quick, Pete, on Norman Lott. He was a rotational player at Tennessee, and he went in the 2nd round. Never started. Was a rotational player, so that's always a concern, being drafted that high.
Well, he transferred from Arizona State. He transferred from Arizona State, too, so we hold that against him.
Oh, come on. You can't do that. I love how you pointed out that you did not give any team an A+. That's for sure, Pete. Never would do such a thing. Quick break for us, but when we return, we dive deep into some teams' QB rooms. We analyze who's likely to be the Week 1 starter for the teams like the Steelers.